Welcome to the debate. Our focus today, well, it draws very deeply from Latif's comprehensive material on strategic supplementing. We're going to be analyzing the contractor's role in maximizing both legitimate compensation and, just as importantly, operational efficiency. This all comes right out of the financial mechanics laid out in Chapter 12.
Right, and this is really where we dissect let's call it the core financial DNA of a successful restoration contractor. We have to look beyond just the labor and the materials. We're talking about the administrative burden, risk tolerance, and the real profit drivers that separate the high-performing businesses from the ones just getting by.
Exactly. And that brings us to our central question. Does the professional contractor have a fundamental business responsibility to prepare what we'll call a comprehensive scope supplement, meaning, documenting and requesting compensation for all covered damage, even things outside their main trade, like fencing, HVAC coils, that sort of thing? Or is the more disciplined approach to just focus on hyper efficiency and maximizing what you can within your core scope of work?
It's the classic tension, isn't it? Maximum potential revenue versus controlled and manageable risk.
It is. My stance is pretty clear. The comprehensive approach is the ethical standard. It serves a homeowner fully, and frankly, it is financially non-negotiable for triggering the general overhead and profit, the ONP, that you need to cover fixed operating costs. Costs that Xactimate's pricing just doesn't include.
And I'm going to maintain that maximizing your net profit, what you actually take home, is achieved through a disciplined focus. I'm arguing for hyper-efficiency on those core trade items, the ones with undeniable documentation, so you can avoid the administrative nightmare and the very real risks that come with coordinating things you don't specialize in.
All right, well, let me start by really detailing the case for that comprehensive scope. My core assertion is this: documenting the full scope of damage isn't just a good idea, it's a professional mandate. It's the critical pathway to triggering ONP. And that's what moves a business from just surviving to, actually thriving. A contractor's job goes beyond just installing shingles. It's to make sure the homeowner gets fully compensated for all the covered damage. It protects them from surprises.
Okay, that sense of duty is, it's commendable. But the insurance process rewards efficiency. Where is the actual quantifiable financial leverage in dealing with items completely outside your trade?
The leverage is the OMP trigger. It's the concept of coordination cost. See, baseline Xactimate prices, they assume a single trade project. But the moment you supplement for even minor secondary items, damaged window screens, patio furniture, a compromised AC comb, you've just established that the project is multi-trade. And multi-trade projects, especially once they cross a certain threshold, maybe $10,000, $15,000, they legitimize the request for that 18 to 20% ONP. And that ONP is vital. It pays for your general overhead and administration, your office staff, the rent, insurance, all the costs that unit pricing completely ignores.
And you really believe that coordinating, a small paint repair or a gutter section, that truly justifies a 20% markup on the entire $20,000 project?
It justifies the necessary professional oversight, yes. Latif lays out the simple arithmetic. If a smaller contractor, let's say they handle 50 jobs a year, and use these comprehensive supplements to add just, say, $2,500 in legitimate documented scope per claim, that's $125,000 in additional revenue. If most of that is the O&P portion, that money, which is there to cover your fixed G&A, it drops almost directly to the bottom line. For a lot of firms, that one move can literally double their profit margin. So this isn't about padding. It's about accessing the funds you need to operate professionally.
I'm just not convinced that the risk you're taking on justifies that reward, especially for the small stuff. I'm coming at this from a risk management and an ROI perspective. My core thesis is that the highest return on your investment comes from efficiency and reducing friction in that approval process. Diverting your team's energy to document non-core items, things you're just going to sub out anyway, it introduces this huge administrative complexity. And I think most importantly, it invites intense scrutiny from desk adjusters.
Why does documenting legitimate damage have to invite scrutiny?
Because you're introducing elements that are statistically, while less familiar to the roofing expert handling the claim, and you often bring in items that are prone to what they call red flags. Adjusters are trained to spot scope creep,
When you take on liability for damage outside your expertise, especially small things like an AC coil comb or a little fence damage, it can push the project into a category they see as clearly not related to loss, or worse, an attempt to inflate scope. And that can trigger a deep audit of your entire supplement. You risk your legitimate, high-value core items getting delayed just because they were packaged with some questionable ancillary stuff.
So you're saying we should just leave legitimate damage on the table for the sake of speed?
I advocate for leveraging the most effective use of your time. The most profitable supplements, they focus only on undeniable, highly defensible items right within your core trade backed by irrefutable documentation. Let's talk about the ROI math. A seasoned project manager, if they take 45 minutes to build a watertight supplement on core, mandatory items, and it yields $2,500, that's an effective labor rate over $3,000 an hour. Chasing small, non-core items, it just dilutes that ROI. And it critically slows down that 72 to 96-hour approval timeline, which is the benchmark for efficiency.
Okay, let's drill down on this O&P justification, because this is where the money is. You suggest that adding non-core items risks sort of manufacturing complexity just to hit that O&P trigger. But the coordination cost is real. If the initial estimate is, say, $17,400 for a roof and gutters, and we add $1,500 in documented interior damage and some fence repairs, that is now a 3-trade project. It requires sourcing bids, managing schedules, quality control for 3 different subs. How is that burden not justification for the $3,000 to $5,000 in O&P?
I agree coordination is a cost, but I'd argue complexity is best justified through scope that's demonstrably complex within your primary trade. You're risking entry into what Latif himself calls the ethical gray area too, manipulating the visibility of minor damage just across a threshold. O&P is far more defensible when the complexity is internal to what you do best.
Okay, so give me an example of that. What internal complexity justifies O&P as effectively as a multi-trade claim?
Certainly, documenting multi-layer tear-off labor. That is irrefutable complexity. You have 32 squares of roof, but there are 3 layers of shingles on there. That means you've got 96 squares of removal labor. Documenting that triple layer removal or identifying custom bent metal that needs on-site fabrication, that undeniably increases project management time. That kind of documentation proof of complexity in your primary profit center is much, much harder for an adjuster to argue with than claiming O&P just because you managed a separate fence guy. The first is a core operational necessity. The second, well, it can look a lot like scope fluff.
But by limiting your scope like that, you force the homeowner to coordinate those other repairs themselves.
Or pay out of pocket. We're hired to restore the property to pre-loss condition, which means addressing all the covered loss. The complexity isn't manufactured, it's just inherent in doing the full job. If we organize the claim right, that ancillary damage provides the legal weight to access the O&P needed to pay for the project management, the ALIB super cost that ensures it all gets done smoothly.
And that brings us right to my second major concern, documentation and risk mitigation. The administrative system you need for your comprehensive scope is it's too resource intensive, especially for a contractor focused on volume and scaling. You're asking your field crew, who are roofing experts, not HVAC techs, to do a full property walkaround and take detailed photos of things they aren't even going to install. They're documenting the loss for the claim, not writing an installation manual for it.
True, but the sheer volume of data creates a huge risk of poor photo documentation, which is a massive administrative red flag. Just think about it. The critical core photos, the steep pitch measurement, the rusted valley metal, the unnailable decking, they get buried or missed because the crew's distracted photographing AC coils. Adjusters want clean, organized evidence. They want the easy button supplement. A folder with 400 photos of minor stuff mixed in with 10 critical ones just screams inefficiency.
I agree that volume without organization is a liability, but that's a process problem, not a strategy problem. Documentation is the ultimate professional shield, for one item or for 50. The strategic documentation process that Latif outlines demands organization. It means photos get uploaded and grouped immediately by category. Gutter damage west side, decking unavailable, ancillary AC coil. This gives you proof of a good faith sourcing effort. You're actually making it easier for the desk adjuster to justify approval to their boss by giving them a clearly structured package of all the damages.
But there's an opportunity cost there. Every minute an assessor spends taking and labeling photos of a damaged mailbox is a minute they are not spending confirming the linear footage of custom bent aluminum or properly scoping out a 3-layer tear-off. That detail work on the core items is where the real profit leverage is.
That detail work is the baseline requirement. It's not an optional extra. The difference is the comprehensive contractor gets paid for the necessary coordination, while the hyper-efficient one leaves that money on the table.
Okay, let's shift focus to what I think are the most powerful, non-negotiable tools we have: building codes and manufacturer specifications.
Agreed. Those provide tremendous leverage, no question.
So why spend energy arguing over a $500 ancillary item when you can use irrefutable legal requirements to get exponential increases in claim value? For instance, citing IRC 905.2.8 for mandatory drip edge, or leveraging ice and water shield requirements. Better yet, using an ITEL report to confirm a discontinued shingle, like Atlas Chalet, which forces a full replacement of an otherwise undamaged slope. That one-core trade decision can turn a $6,000 repair into a $22,000 replacement. These are legally required and give you justification an adjuster just can't deny.
Right. You're focused on those big individual wins, and they are essential. I'm not denying that, but the comprehensive scope strategy amplifies those wins and gives you consistency across the whole claim file. The main goal is to document the pre-loss condition standard and restore it completely.
That standard is best defined by code and manufacturer specs.
Precisely, but it also includes the other components. If the homeowner had ice and water shield and custom bent fascia, and they had covered damage to their garage door and fence, documenting everything reinforces the contractor's role as the property's holistic advocate. When an adjuster sees a claim that is meticulously documented, cites specific codes for core items, and addresses all the other legitimate damages, they're much more likely to approve the whole package. It establishes your professional credibility.
I still maintain that the administrative overhead to manage all that complexity, sourcing, vetting, and managing liability from multiple other trades, it often eats into the very O&P you fought so hard to get. That requires a level of admin support and expertise that's just outside the core competency of roofing.
But that is exactly what the O&P is designed to cover. It's a closed, self-justifying financial system. You staff your administrative team correctly, you use the comprehensive scope strategy. That triggers O&P, and the O&P pays for the administration. That is the sustainable path to scaling a professional restoration business.
And I believe the risk of poor execution on that comprehensive scope is just too high. A sloppy comprehensive file will get you denials and delays way faster than a clean, efficient, core trade supplement.
Speed isn't the ultimate measure of success if it means leaving the homeowner unprotected and your company undercompensated.
A sustainable system has to be repeatable and low risk.
A profitable system must be comprehensive. A professional commitment to the homeowner means documenting all covered damage. This comprehensive scope strategy, when it's backed by rigorous, organized documentation, is the path to running a high-profit business, ensuring you get paid for your general overhead and profit, not just your shingles.
And while that financial upside is tempting, complexity breeds vulnerability. The most reliable and repeatable way to maximize your net profit is disciplined focus on core competencies. You leverage code and manufacturer requirements for high-value items, and you maintain razor-sharp documentation solely to get that approval fast. Speed and accuracy on your highest-value core items is the true financial engine. It helps you avoid the red flags that lead to delays.
At the end of the day, our goal is the same: maximizing legitimate compensation for the entire scope of work. We'd encourage listeners to really weigh both the substantial financial upside of the comprehensive approach, getting that necessary O&P, against the operational risks of expanding scope beyond your core expertise.
Indeed. That strategic decision, broad or narrow scope, is going to fundamentally define your business's profitability and your administrative workload. And that concludes our discussion on strategic supplementing from the framework Latif outlines in Chapter 12. We invite you to tune in for our next installment in the series, where we'll explore the deeper legal aspects of codes and compliance.